So in the last video, I promised a surprise. So I'm not going to drag it out. Let's just get to it. I'd like to introduce you to Crichton. He is my Cane Corso, or Italian Mastiff, and this is him running around quite a bit. And he's my new puppy, he's my new family member, and he's already tested my patience, so that's okay. He's just a puppy. He doesn't, he's very smart, he's learning very quickly. He knows how to sit, stay, drop it most of the time, and he's pretty good with his name. So in less than 2 weeks, I'd say we're at a good start. Working on the house training. He's doing really well overall. Just once or twice we had a miscommunication. Let's get to the Volvo part of this thing. First of all, let me make sure that everyone knows what I'm working on. I have a 2006 Volvo XC90, which is a SUV. It is the Ocean Race Edition, so it has a V8, and that V8 is made by Yamaha, and it has a 60-degree offset instead of a 90-degree offset, which is standard in most V8s. The 60-degree offset is important for fitting into a smaller space so that it can be cross-mounted instead of mounted front to back like most traditional V8s were mounted. I've also read that this same motor made by Yamaha, or a variation of it, is used in marine applications, so on boats. This has all-wheel drive, a Haldex system, which means that it only has all-wheel drive when it's necessary, otherwise it's front-wheel drive, as I understand it. This is my first Volvo, so we're working through all the stuff that is different from all the vehicles I've had in the past. If you look at my last video, you'll know that I am currently not working. I am looking at positions. But when I was working, I bought a lot of parts for the suspension and the brakes. When you drive the Volvo right now, it feels like you're driving on a trampoline. So I know that the suspension needs to be redone. I also bought some steering parts, generic tie rod ends, ball joints, things that are standard, going to need replaced. It has 140,000 miles on it, so that's all stuff that's going to need replaced. I also bought a stereo system for it, which that's a whole thing in itself. The Volvo doesn't use a regular stereo setup. They use a CAN bus to control aspects of a radio system. I'll go into it later in another video. I also bought a scan tool because you need to have a Volvo specific scan tool to do anything more than the very basics. And so I have that, and I also bought first manuals from eBay, and I bought two, and one is an excellent shop manual. I would just say go look at on eBay. You can find manuals for just about everything. I also want to consider safety when working on this vehicle. There's some things that I may not do myself. I may actually end up paying someone else to do. This comes down to either cost. It would cost me more to do it myself, or safety, where I'm not confident in my either the tools that I have to do a job or my ability to do it. I haven't seen anything like that yet, but I'm very conscious of safety, and I would say if you're thinking about doing this, don't do it. If you decide to do it, you're on your own. You need to make sure that you are safe. You are responsible for your safety. I will need to get a couple other tools to do some of the jobs I plan to do. There are a couple tools I'm waiting to see if I'm actually going to do that work, or if I'm just going to pay someone to do it, or if I'm going to rent a tool. Well, this is as far as I got. I had ordered a new shock absorber. I have the new shock absorber, which I'm going to get out here in a second. Get them both in frame here. As you can see, they don't really look even close to the same. Or maybe you can't see, but the one on the right here, that right there, looks like a self-leveling shock versus the standard shock that I had ordered. I plan on just changing the shocks today because I thought, oh, that'll be easy. Changing shocks isn't that terrible. I'll just knock that out today. Have a little content for my YouTube channel at the same time, which would be nice. But what I found out is, it looks like I got the wrong part. What I have to do now is run the VIN, verify what shocks are supposed to be in here, and then go about obtaining them. Or verifying that these standard shocks would be a legitimate replacement. However, what I'm being told when I talk to IPD, who's been phenomenal, is that often these shock mounts will not be compatible at all. So now I have to go back and do a little more research. This is the joy of doing a build. So let me tell you about the resources that I've been using. Wow, it's loud out here. Let me tell you about the resources I've been using. I've been using the Volvo website itself. If you know your Volvo, the Volvo website is an excellent place to get the information you need for parts. The problem I ran into is that they often refer to this shock is for one marked this, like marked 35 or marked 26 or marked however it's marked, but I couldn't figure out where the marking was. This is where some other resources came in handy. The two other companies I've done most of my work with is IPD, which specializes only in Volvos, and FCP Euro, which is European vehicles. FCP Euro actually has on their website how to figure out these marked things and how to read them. And it turned out it was on a front driver's side plate that sits up in under the hood that gave me the information I needed. So yes, I have the Nivomat. That's what I'm going to call them, whether that's how you pronounce it or not. And I looked at those, and Volvo wants about 600 bucks for them. I went to FCP Europe. I went to FCP Euro, and I went to IPD, and they both want about, I think it's 480 bucks. I'll show you what the cost was. However, FCP Euro, it turned out, had a conversion kit to convert them to standard. Now, the reason this is a big deal is I was going to go with the Bilstein shock absorbers, which I really like, all the way around, both in the front struts and the back shocks. But it turns out you have to, if you're going to use the standard shocks, you have to go to standard springs, because I guess the shock I have on there actually does a lot more work than the standard, and therefore I'm guessing doesn't have the same it doesn't have the same spring, and I'm suspecting that the spring that's on there doesn't do as much work as the springs on ones with standard shock absorbers. But regardless, you got to replace the springs. So this turned out to be a much better deal, because having already purchased the shocks, the difference is going to be $100 instead of buying $1,000 for just two shock absorbers. And I suspect that's why the shock absorbers were never replaced, is because they found out how much they cost, and they were like, nope. So we're going to go to a standard shock absorber set up in the back, which means I'm replacing springs as well. I'm waiting on the springs to come in. When they get in, I will start planning that work. I looked up the manual before I ordered the parts that I needed, and it looks something that's, I mean, it's not, I won't say it's easy, but it's something that should be able to be done. So that's what's coming up. I'm going to show you here the wrapping up of the work I did, but basically I found out that I had the wrong shocks. So the next build, we hope to actually get some work done and make some headway. So until next time, remember that I love you. Take care of yourself. Rock on.